Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Infinity Fast Forward webinar series. It's a pleasure to have everybody join us this morning. My name's Steve Kessler, and I'm going to be the host of the program today. I have to tell you all, this is a topic that's really close to my heart. As a company that's been involved in safety training for many years, we talk an awful lot about developing a culture of safety within your company. And that's easy to say and not so easy to do in some cases. And that's the reason we're going to talk about ways to achieve that sort of a safety culture. Title of our program today is Achieving Safety Results Through Strategic Marketing and Communications. So this may be a bit of a different approach than y'all have heard about before, but I'm very excited to have those of you that are out there joining us this morning. Before I introduce our guest, let me just cover a couple of little housekeeping items real quick. Everybody that's logged in is muted, so we can't hear you. So if you would like to communicate with us, you can use the chat box, which is in the little tray there, I believe, at the bottom of your screen, or you can use the Q&A box if you'd like to pose a question. So it's a great way for us to know who's out there. So if y'all don't mind, why don't you just jump on the chat, tell us who you are, where you're from, and we'll know who's out there that we're talking to this morning. So while y'all are doing that, let me introduce our guest. I'm very happy to have Lisa Battaglia join us this morning. Lisa is the founder and president of Battaglia Communications. Lisa has more than 15 years of acclaimed communications and marketing expertise in both major private and public sector organizations. She works with companies to create internal marketing campaigns that promote culture buy-in and external marketing and thought leadership campaigns to attract and retain ideal customers. This creates measurable results around brand awareness, customer satisfaction, and employee retention. Lisa has proven that a healthy internal safety and overall culture drives external success. She guides organizations through this process by focusing on communication with employees through internal brand development and alignment around mission, vision, and values. Employees deliver better service to customers that strengthens the client and talent retention and positively impacts the bottom line, which is something that's very important to all of us in this business right now. Before Lisa founded Battaglia Communications, she served as a director of communications and public relations for Jetco Delivery, a Houston-based transportation and logistics company. And during that time, Lisa worked on both internal and external marketing, helping to promote and anchor the organization's robust culture through communication. At the same time, she worked as Director of Marketing and Public Relations for Jetco CEO Brian Felco, developing his leadership brand through the securement of speaking engagements and press outreach. And I'm a big fan of Brian's, and one of my favorite books of his is Driving to Perfection, which is all about creating a company culture. Lisa also served as Vice President of Marketing and Communication at Patriot Rail, a short line railroad holding company operating 32 railroads in 23 states. Lisa has served on the Texas Trucking Association Board of Directors, the American Trucking Association's Image and Branding Committee, and the Houston Museum District Marketing Team. Lisa has a Bachelor of Arts in English and a Master of Arts in English Literature, both from Belmont University. Lisa currently resides in Houston, Texas. Good morning, Lisa. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you so much for having me.
It's a pleasure to have you here today. We're excited to hear what you've got to tell us.
Thank you. And thank you everyone for tuning in. We're going to get going. So let's just jump right into this. When I talk with people about what advertising means to them, or what the first thing people think of when they hear advertising or marketing or communications, often people think about billboards that you're seeing when you're driving down the road, maybe an ad on television, a pop-up that you're getting, on your computer, something on LinkedIn. And when I ask people, who are you marketing to? Who is your audience? Typically, the first thing people will say is, well, we're marketing to our clients and potential clients, which is great. And that is something absolutely every organization needs to be reaching out to clients and potential clients. But I also want you to think about who really are your most important customers. And those are your employees. Keep in mind that your employees are responsible for customer service, they're responsible for productivity, and they're ultimately responsible for your organization's safety culture. So when we think about who we're putting the most effort into in terms of development, sometimes we think, well, we've got to be completely focused on the outside. We need to be focused on our clients. But I really want you to start today to think about your customers and your clients, who the most important people are, and they're ultimately your employees. Your employees are responsible for driving safety. And if you buy the notion that safety is behavior-based, which I hope that you do, then what is it that creates behavior? And the answer to that, I would tell you, is the environment that we create. The environment is what dictates how people behave. And ultimately, in safety-sensitive industries like we're all in, we want people to do the right thing even when no one is looking. So that said, your organization's bottom line is dependent on building an employee-owned culture. Your bottom line and safety are tied hand in hand. And if your employees are driving safe behaviors, then your bottom line is dependent on creating engagement around your team and really investing in them and treating them as if they are your clients as well. So I want to talk a little bit about why employee engagement matters. So when you have engaged employees, ultimately you're going to see a boost in productivity. You'll see a higher customer loyalty, higher profitability, less turnover, fewer workplace safety failures, and lower absenteeism. When people feel engaged, they're more likely going to want to show up to work. They're more likely going to want to be involved in what's happening in your organization. And so keep in mind throughout this presentation that employee engagement ultimately translates to your customer experience. And in my case, the question is, how can marketing and communications drive employee engagement? And so we're going to talk through some ideas today about how you can use marketing and communications internally to start to drive your overall company culture and safety culture. So that said, I want you to rethink for today what you think of as marketing. We all think, like I said in the beginning, that we're focused on the external. But for today, we're going to talk about internal marketing and communications. And I do want to say, I know that probably a lot of you on this call maybe don't work with a marketing professional, or you don't have an internal marketing and communications team, and that is okay. I am, of course, always here to bounce ideas off of you. So please feel free to reach out if you ever have any questions. But I also want you to consider forming a committee at your organization with employees of all different levels. So some frontline employees, office employees, C-suite, everyone, get them together, maybe 5 to 6 people, those people who are your thought leaders in your organization or who kind of are in tune with communication around what's happening, and ask them to think about some of these ideas that I'm going to present today, because a lot of this, I would encourage you could start on this tomorrow. So the goal here is for you to take away some ideas to really start to think about employee engagement and safety as being dependent upon investing in your team in terms of internal marketing and communications. So we're going to talk through a few things today. First is safety culture buy-in through internal branding, and I'm going to explain what that is. Safety culture establishment through regular communication, and I'll give you guys some tips for how you can create some really effective internal communication. We'll talk about your handbook. We'll talk about driving culture through family, and then we'll wrap it up with how does this all fit together and how can you take your internal marketing and communication strategy and use that as a value proposition to attract the best customers. So first thing we're going to talk about is safety culture buy-in through internal branding. I'm sure you guys all have a brand, a logo that represents who you are. It's your identity, it's your values, and it's that image that when people see it, they know what you do, they know what you stand for. So for example, when I ask this question and I'm in front of people live, I always say, you know, what are these two brands? And immediately everybody knows, right? First one is Amazon and the second one is Nike. It doesn't have to say Amazon and it doesn't have to say Nike. We know that that's what these images represent. And based on what you see, for example, this Amazon logo, you may have different feelings about that than someone else. So for example, if Amazon is always consistently on time, your package shows up, it's perfect, then you're most naturally going to have a positive association with that. Now, if you know we've got Amazon Prime and it says it's going to be there that afternoon and it shows up a week later, you're probably going to start to have a different feeling when you see this logo. And so I want you to think about that when it comes to your logo at your and your brand at your organization. When people see your brand, what do they first think of? Do they think of excellent customer service, that you guys are always on time, that you're trustworthy, or are there negative associations with that? So keep in mind that this brand is your visual representation of who you are. And the majority of people are visual learners. So that's why having a brand like this and a visual representation of your organization is so important. So your external brand, what we just saw, speaks to your customers. But your internal brand speaks to your employees. And if we're talking about our most important customers being our employees, then I want you to start to consider the idea of building an internal brand for your organization. Your internal brand is a visual representation of your organization's mission, vision, and values. So if we're talking about safety, your internal brand is a representation of your safety culture. It is that image that people will see, and when they do see it, they are reminded that safety comes first, that there's nothing more important than them getting home to their loved ones every day, that we don't cut corners, that we can call a timeout without fear of retribution. But this visual representation is that reminder of all of those things, just as if you looked at Amazon or Nike and you were reminded of what they provide as well. So as part of this process, when it comes to your marketing and communications strategy and starting this process of building your internal brand, we have to have employee buy-in around your internal brand from the very beginning. So rather than someone like me come in and dictate, hey, this is what I think your internal brand should be, or even, you know, your safety department, your CEO, your leaders, this is about frontline employees offering to you what they think your internal brand is going to be. So while marketing and communications and the strategy drives how this process happens, ultimately, you want to turn the reins over to your frontline employees to work with marketing to develop your internal brand. So I'm going to kind of talk through how I work with clients on this and what you might consider if you want to start the process of developing an internal brand. So the first thing is to send out a communication to your team saying, hey, we are really excited. We've decided that we want to create an internal brand that represents our mission, vision, and values, that represents safety, and that reminds you that safety is more important than anything else. what are your ideas? And you start to get feedback. So what are your 3 to 5 words or phrase that you think represents our organization's safety culture? And let people respond back and send in their ideas. I worked with a company recently, and there was a little bit of hesitancy from the leadership team. They thought, I don't know if anyone's going to actually respond. We have about 300 employees, and we had around 130 responses when we sent out an email saying, we want to hear what your idea is. So once all of those ideas, or we call them taglines, came in, then we formed a committee of people from all different levels of the organization. There were about 5 people. And we said, you guys vote. What are your top 3 out of the 130 that were submitted? We took those top 3, sent them back out to the team and said, hey, here are the top 3 that we think that the committee thinks best exemplifies our safety culture. Which is your favorite? And again, we had an overwhelming response back. People really wanted to be involved in the process, and they had something to say. So we tallied all of those up, and then that's what we led with. We sent it out to the team and said, congratulations, this is the winner. Once that is established, then it's time to create the visual representation. So what you're seeing here, my team and I got together and we draw up 3 different logos. And again, those go out to the team and we say, you guys vote, which ones do you think best exemplifies our safety culture? And then the ones that receive the most votes, that's kind of what we go with. In this case, this was with Jetco Delivery. The internal safety culture brand is called Driving to Perfection, D2P. Driving to Perfection was an idea from one of the drivers who sent that in. So frontline engagement from the very beginning. And this is the logo that they ultimately decided on. Here's another example just to get you guys thinking. This is an oil and gas company that I work with, and we went through this whole process. They had an overwhelming amount of responses. It was really exciting to see. And one of the frontline employees came up with this idea, Heath to Home. And this meant that the goal was for all employees to get from home to Heath and back home safely every day. This is the logo that everybody voted on, and then we ran with it. So once this internal brand is developed, now is where your marketing and communications strategy has to come in. You can't just create the brand, throw it up on the wall and then call it a day. There's got to be constant reminders of what this means. You have to be able to measure it. Are people responding to it? Do people know what it means? And just keep in mind that frontline engagement and that employee engagement from the very beginning will really help people attach to this and have ownership over it. So it's so important that you guys, when you create this, that you really are engaging everybody in your organization around what this means. So once the brand is established, then what? How are you going to test to see if it's working? How are you communicating it out? And again, that's where your strategy comes in. You start to rebrand everything. So let's say you have organizational stand-up meetings or stand-downs. They're called H2H meetings from then on. But it's this constant reminder and communication to team members about what the internal brand means and what your safety culture really means. So this is a good example of how we started testing to see whether or not H2H was landing. We sent out postcards to homes. We had posters around offices. We sent emails, and it had a QR code saying, scan this and send to us what you think H2H means to you. And we started getting just an overwhelming response. People wanted to tell us what it meant. It's so interesting to see how people really want to be engaged and they want to be heard. So I love this one that you're seeing on the right side here. It says, this was a field supervisor. He wrote in and said, I'm a single parent to my 9-year-old son, Jackson. He's an amazing young man, and he depends on me for everything. We're best friends. Heath to Home, H2H, means that I can make it home safe to be with my little dude. So we started asking people, and that's a really good way to see if it's landing. When I worked with another company on this, about 6 months in, we decided to video what people thought the internal brand. And it's amazing to see how everyone pretty much gives the same response. Everyone knows what the mission, vision, values are. Everyone knows that it's about doing the right thing, about getting home safely. Another idea I want to give you guys, first of all, if you're on this call and you don't have life critical rules, I strongly encourage you to go back to your team and come up with those life critical rules. So those are the rules that, if violated, could seriously harm or kill someone. They're the ones that, if violated, there's no 3 strikes, you're out. That's it, you're out. And part of that, of course, is once you establish these, you have to stick to them. But the process by which this happens is so interesting because, again, when you're coming up with life critical rules that support your organization's safety culture, it's got to be, you've got to engage your team members around it from the very beginning. So in this case, when I was working with Jetco, the safety department didn't come up with these 6. It was actually the drivers who came up with them. We pulled in about 15 drivers and said, what are your top rules that if you think are broken, that's it. And these are the ones that they came up with. So it really helped from the very beginning drive engagement around these very serious rules. And then where marketing and communications can step in to help it stick is by branding it, rather than just called life critical rules or whatever term that you're using at your organization. We ended up calling them the Serious 6. And we tested it again a few months, 6 months in. We'd ask people, what are the Serious 6? And people knew. And that's because when we had the marketing and communications strategy in place, it meant that people saw this all the time. So these were actually wallet cards that all of our drivers kept in their pocket or in their wallet. And when there were meetings, they were asked to pull that card out to show that they had it, and someone would read what they were. We had posters. We had these as stickers and cabs. So it's really about that constant reminder of what these are, and then the branding around it to make it interesting. And remember, if we're visual learners, this is helpful for keeping these alive. The next thing I want to talk about is safety culture buy-in through regular communication. So internal communication is the key to driving your company's safety culture. If you're not communicating what is expected in terms of policies, procedures, and overall safety, then you're not getting to your employees. People need to know. But when it comes to communication, there are a couple of rules to keep in mind. First, be clear, be authentic, and then be human. In the world of ChatGPT right now, which I understand people want to use it because it sometimes makes things easier, but it really takes away the human aspect of what you want to say. I actually, I tell this story a lot, but all of a sudden I know someone on LinkedIn who has started posting all the time, but he is posting these messages that I know for a fact he did not write. This does not sound like him. And it's very inauthentic. And it's people can see that, right? When you're not authentic, people know. If it's not really you speaking, it just doesn't always land. And that doesn't mean that your communication has to be perfect. Make it you. Be yourself, be human, because people are going to respond much better to that. So here are some ideas for internal communication to help drive your organization's safety culture. These are all things that you guys could do starting as soon as we get off this call. So first of all, welcome letters. This is such an easy way to immediately start to engage with your new team members. So my suggestion for you guys would be, when you have a new employee, once a month, gather all of those the list of names of who your new employees are, and then send letters home, either from your safety director, from your CEO, someone in the C-suite, and your executive team. and welcome the new team members. But where it's really important to keep in mind when it comes to communication is knowing your audience, and your marketing and communications person should be an expert in recognizing audience. So in this case, if a welcome letter is going home, it's not just going to the employees, right? It's also going to their families. So I would strongly suggest that when you write the letters home, dear Bob and family, we are so excited that you have joined our company. We are welcoming you, and we want to share with you what our safety culture means. Let's say it's H2H, Heath to Home. Heath to Home means X, Y, and Z. We're excited to have you. Here is a contact if you have any questions. And then consider including a $50, $75 gift card to a local restaurant, and say, this is on us. Take your family out and celebrate joining the team. When I've worked with companies on doing this, it's kind of amazing. Spouses often respond back to the CEO saying, thank you. It really meant a lot to hear from you. I'm so excited that, my spouse is part of the team. You will probably get responses back, because people feel heard, they're appreciated. And it's a really good way from the very beginning with your new employees and their families, and we'll talk about family buy-in in a little bit, to get them rallied behind your organization's safety culture. Another thing, shout outs and a process for gathering them. Sometimes I see when I work with organizations that we get so caught up in sharing what's not working that we forget to share all of the good things. And so make sure that you are, congratulating people on when things happen, and that there's a process that you have in place so that communication is flowing to the C-suite or to your marketing person, so you have a way to capture those wins. Another thing to think about is recognition for events that are happening outside of the workplace. Keep in mind that we all understand, we all have lives outside of work. So let's say you have a team member run a 5K. Send that out to the team. Remember, we're trying to create employee engagement. And when people are seen and heard, they're much more likely to be engaged with your organization. And that means they're much more likely to support your organization's safety culture. And then just general reminders to employees that they matter. Creating that line of regular communication where you're seeing people for who they are, that they're not just employees, they're human beings. Another thing to consider, if you don't already have an employee spotlight award in place, I would say get on that, as soon as we get off this call. But one thing to think about, a way to recognize your team members is, typically when I work with companies, I see that it's the managers who are voting on who should be the employee spotlight or win the employee spotlight award. But if you're trying to drive safety and you're trying to create peer-to-peer accountability, then once again, turn that over to your frontline employees and let them vote on each other. Let them nominate each other. I would say pull management, pull the C-suite out, and really let them own this, and make it easy for people to submit. So in this case, we had a QR code. People scanned that. This was a poster that we had around offices. We also sent this home in the mail so people could scan. And it was amazing to see how many people were voting on their peers saying, hey, he helped me do this, or I noticed that she did this. I want to nominate her for this award. So if you're not doing this, this is an easy place to start to better engage your employees around safety and acknowledging them when they do the right thing. Another thing I want you to think about is, despite the fact that I am in advertising and marketing, I'm not a really big believer in paid advertising. I think, if you have a billboard on the side of the road, are you really getting the eyes that you want on that? Are you really getting calls off of it? And they're really expensive. Advertising can be so expensive. So my suggestion would be, rather than focusing, putting dollars on the outside, to try to recruit or get people to join your organization, I would say consider who really are your walking billboards. And those are your employees, right? they're the ones who know what is happening. They're talking to other people. They want to work with other safe employees and have team members on their team that they know are going to do the right thing. So if you're doing a lot of external advertising, and please keep in mind, I work with companies as well on external marketing. It is so important. But for this particular purpose, I would suggest taking some of those dollars and reinvesting them into your team members around creating a marketing communications strategy around safety, because essentially, they're your walking billboards, and the more you can get engagement around them, the better your recruiting is going to be. But if you start to notice that there is a rotating door at your organization, it's time to stop and think what is happening and what's happening with communication. I would guarantee you that you have a communication issue if you're starting to see a lot of people come in and out. When I worked with Jetco, it was amazing. There was so much emphasis on employee engagement around safety and building this internal safety culture. And, with trucking companies in a industry that has 100% annual turnover or more, they had about 30 to 35%. And it was because there was so much emphasis on employees and engagement and doing the right thing, making sure people were heard, getting people involved, and people wanted to stay. And not only that, but the majority of drivers who came in for two reasons to interview. One, someone on the team had brought them in and suggested that they come work for the company. Or two, they had heard about the internal safety culture and the emphasis that was placed on employees, and that they meant something and they were valued. And when we ask people, what brought you here, that's generally what people would say. So when it comes to recruiting and retention, keep in mind that marketing and communications can play a huge part in that, in helping establish your culture through internal branding, through the proper communications, and just opening up lines of communication within the company, because people want to be seen and heard. It's not enough for you just to send an email if people can't respond back to you. The next thing I want to talk about is your handbook and how this can be a collaboration between marketing and your frontline employees. So I know we all probably have handbooks. Sometimes they're really, really long. I actually had a client recently send me their handbook, and it was over 200 pages. And we were like, all right, we got to start over with this. Number one, is everybody reading it? Do you really think that your employees are going to sit down and read 200 pages of your handbook? Probably not. Two, is it understandable? Does it make sense? And then, if you turn around in your office and you see your handbook sitting up on the shelf and it's collecting dust, it's probably time to revisit it. And I'm going to tell you that I think it's really important that your handbook be a living, breathing document, something that's always evolving and changing, because as you're finding better ways to perform your jobs, then policies and procedures should change. But where this becomes important in terms of driving employee engagement around policies, procedures, and safety culture is who on your team knows best how to perform their job. It's probably the person who's actually doing it. Your forklift driver, your truck driver. Those are the people who know how to perform their job the best and the safest. And so I would encourage you, when it comes to revisiting your handbook, or if you're, starting a new handbook, get your frontline employees involved with your marketing and communications person, and let it be a collaboration. When I worked with a company on this recently, we brought people in and we put people in groups, and we said, here, 5 things that we need you to tell us how to best do these. And everybody had the same idea. They wrote up, we had someone writing notes and they talked about it. And we decided, here's the best way. And then where marketing and communications play such a big role here is taking all of those ideas and simplifying it. So remember, audience is so important. If you've got team members who, are high school grads, yet you're writing something off ChatGPT that sounds like you have a PhD in English, these things don't compute, right? People aren't going to take it seriously. They're not going to understand. It's got to be easy to understand. Sorry, I'm going to go back on that. And one other way to do that is when I worked with one company on this, we took a lot of pictures rather, there was text, but a lot of it, we went out into the field and we said, hey, show us exactly how to perform this task. And we took pictures and then we put them into the handbook and we made it really easy. And we also, I would encourage you to, when you're doing your handbook, make sure it's something where pages can be torn out like a binder, and then you can put new pages back in, because you want to make this living, breathing document. You want to make it something that's always evolving. So as people come up with better ideas, there's a process for them sharing that with you. There's an approval process that goes into place, and then marketing and comms can step in and add that in. And one way to really make this, your handbook, come alive and be, something that people really do rely on, is when you have new policies and procedures that come out, make sure that you have your stand-up meeting or stand-down meeting, your new page, bring the new page with you and say, hey, we've decided this is the better way to do things. Someone get up and read this, share it. And then this is page 15, pull your old page 15 out and put this new one in. And it's a really good way just to keep safety top of mind. Another thing I want to talk about is driving culture through family involvement. So I love this. I'm a huge believer in it. It works. And I think it's so important, and something that we often miss when it comes to driving safety. So I would ask you, do the spouses and loved ones of your employees understand the organization's mission, vision, and values? Do they understand what the safety culture is about? It is so important to bring spouses, to bring loved ones in on what's going on in the organization, and why your company's safety culture is so important, because you want to make them allies, right? Like, if you've got a driver who's got to report to the yard at 5:30 in the morning, but the spouse has kept them out at a bar drinking until 1 o'clock the night before, that's probably not going to work. So getting loved ones engaged and families engaged around your organization's safety culture, and explaining to them the person that you love has a very highly safety sensitive job. It is essential that they come to work rested, that they're ready to do their jobs. And so explaining that to families is so important to helping create this overall safety culture, where families are your allies and they're helping promote the culture as well. So a couple ideas to share with you guys. I'm a big believer in quarterly newsletters. These, though, keep in mind, we've got to keep audience in mind. So these are going home to families. So while, having updates on what's going on in the organization is important, you also have to keep in mind that this is really probably the spouse is going to see this. And it's not just something that would be office focused that you're sending out. So in this case, this particular client always had an intro where the CEO had got a chance to share what's going on, kind of like a State of the Union. In this case, we always had values, and here there was an important payroll update. And why was that important? Well, because one, of course, it's important to the employees, but if payroll situation's changing, that's also going to be important to the families. But again, thinking about audience and how are you going to pull families in on your organization's safety mission and culture to get them to be your allies. In this case, we started with one of my clients. We have this section called Around the Dinner Table Conversation. And so in this section, we just offer tips for people to talk with their families about safety. And in this case, it was NSC was having their National Teen Driver Safety Week. And so we said, here are some things just to talk about with your family about safe teen driving. Another thing that I'm a big proponent of is making sure you're getting the kids involved. Do the kids of your employees understand how important it is of what their parent does, and how important safety is? This one in particular was just, it was part of the newsletter. and you're not seeing the whole thing, but there was also a section that said, have them complete this and then email it to us. And we had set up a special email. And send us a picture of your kid holding their completed activity, finding safety words. We got an overwhelming response. So many pictures sent in of kids completing their activity. Sometimes it's this, sometimes we'll do a coloring activity. It just depends on what we're focused on that month, but it's really great idea to get kids involved around your organization's safety culture too. And marketing communications can come up with creative ideas like this to help. It's also a really good way to determine if these are landing, if people are reading them, right? Because when you start getting responses, you know that people are actually reading the newsletters when they go out to the homes. And then keeping in mind audience again and pulling in families. So if you're on this call and you've ever, launched new technology, you know that it can be a daunting task. It can be scary and it can be a lot. So I would strongly say if you are, installing drive cameras or if you're implementing any new technology, having a marketing and communications strategy around how you're going to roll this out, detailed for the next 6 months. Here's everything that's going to happen. Here's our audience. Here's what we're going to say. Here's potential questions that we may get. Having a plan, a communications plan truly makes the biggest difference in the success of rolling out new technology. And then flip it on the outside again. You want to get family involvement. So in this case, one of my clients was installing Samsara. And while a ton of communication, of course, went out to all of the employees, we also wanted to get buy-in from the families. So this was a postcard that we sent home, telling families what matters most is your loved ones. Here's what we're doing and why. We're installing these Samsara cameras, and they're going to help protect your loved one. And then we had this opportunity for kids to complete this activity and send it to us. And we got so many pictures, again, of kids holding up their safe driver's license. But just keep in mind, there's so many different ways to communicate about your organization's safety culture, and depending on who you're talking to will dictate the messaging. Another great example to get kids involved, when I worked with Jetco, we sent these letters home with a box of crayons and a blank sheet of paper and an envelope back, and we said, we want your kids, grandkids, nieces, nephews to draw what D2P, the organization's internal safety culture, means to you or means to them. And again, overwhelming amount of response. As you can see, the one on the right says, bye, remember to drive to perfection. Bye, never forget what's important, D2P. That D2P means everything to me, that my aunt comes home safely every day. So really getting this buy-in from the families is going to help drive your organization's safety culture, which of course is ultimately going to drive your company's bottom line. But then we took these, and how do you take safety and flip it on the outside to show your customers how important this is? We actually took these and we turned them into a calendar. And that is what we gave. We gave one to all of our team members, of course, but then that's what we gave as Christmas gifts or holiday gifts to our customers. And about 2-3 months later, I was actually on a sales call with one of our sales team members and walked in, and these calendars were on in pretty much every single cubicle at this office. Everyone had them hanging, and it was just such a great reminder of how safety and proper communication around it can get everybody aligned. And then you've got this reminder at a customer's location of the fact that you guys are safe, that you take it seriously. And this visual representation of that really worked well. When I worked on this with another client, I love this, so I always like to share it. They have team group texts. And so one of the managers screenshot this and sent it to the CEO, and they sent it back to me, but the calendar had just come out. And so you'll see there's a picture of the calendar, and someone says the 2025 Heath calendar, and someone else says, what, nice. And then the guy says, hey, Kaylin, your kiddo made the front page. And someone else said, that's badass. And then someone else says, this is pretty cool. Did you get that in the mail? She said, yes. And then the woman responds, she said, I just got service. She's going to be so excited. This is so great to see because you're showing your employees that you care about their families, that you care about safety, that you recognize them, and really having this opportunity to bring people in. So I'm going to wrap up with your value proposition and your marketing efforts and how all of this fits together. So safety done right is part of your core customer value proposition because customers want to work with safe companies. I was at a conference recently and they were talking, an attorney got up and was talking about nuclear verdicts. And it was just shocking, things that are happening and that one safety incident can completely knock your organization out. And you just can't afford for that to happen. I actually heard from someone who was running a trucking company. They had a really bad safety failure. It was catastrophic. And he said he was sitting across from his wife that night. This was an employee of his that had gotten to the accident. And he was sitting across from his wife that night and said, I think we're going to have to shut it down. And she said, we are. They just couldn't recover from it. So your safety culture and making sure that people are doing the right thing, even when no one's looking, there's nothing more important than that. And companies just don't want to work with unsafe companies. I did work with an organization one time where their biggest customer actually came to them and said, hey, we've heard about your internal safety culture, and we want to learn more and we want to work with you guys. They ended up signing this customer. They didn't have to go out and get them, right? Like this had started to translate to the outside. And they ended up signing this customer and it was their biggest one. So I want you to take a second to read this with me. It's so important. You will attract the best customers and those who will pay a premium for your service because they appreciate your organization's safety culture. Marketing and communications will ensure your safety value proposition is communicated to your customers and potential customers. Marketing and communications will shift the conversation about your internal safety culture to the outside in a way that illustrates that safety is a non-negotiable core value. So what I mean by this is part of your marketing communication strategy when it comes to building your internal safety culture, it's got to then shift to the outside. How are you going to take that same messaging and show your clients or potential clients the importance of safety and everything that you're doing to ensure that your team is safe, the public is safe, your customers are safe, and that you are reliable in doing the right thing? Your safety culture and bottom line depend upon building a strong marketing and communication strategy. And at the end of the day, not only is it your organization's bottom line, of course, but it's the safety of your team, the safety of your customers, and the safety of the public. And that said, you cannot afford not to have a strong safety culture that is driven by a perfected marketing and communications strategy. And with that, I will wrap up.
Excellent. We have a couple of questions,
Yes.
Lisa. There's one here from Ed. This is referring to you talked about newsletters.
Yeah.
And he said, were these newsletters available in digital format as well? For example, a email mailing list that is subscription based.
No, in this case, no, because the newsletters were just going out to employees. They weren't going out to customers. So the organization had all of the home mailing addresses and we sent them to the homes. I would say that, of course, having a digital version of it, but it's not necessarily something that you want on your website because this is really focused on your employees, not necessarily your customers. But on the flip side of that, you can take some of that same messaging and flip it for the appropriate audience. So if it is your customers, taking some of those ideas and making them more about how that would affect them or what that means to them would work.
Very good. One question that I have, Lisa, obviously there are a lot of wonderful things that you talked about here that companies can do to help work and build this culture of safety. Are there places where where is the pain in this? Do you have any examples of where this might get pushback, or is that an issue?
You know, where it doesn't work is lack of follow through.
Yeah.
If you're going to do it, it's not just a one-off thing. For example, you can't just create an internal brand and then call it a day and expect everyone to know. That's where I think your strategy is so important, because actually I was talking with someone recently. They have ton of great ideas and they do it once and then they kind of drop the ball on it, and so nothing's sticking. So that strategy in place to make sure that, you know, you've got a 3 month, 6 month, year strategy. How are you going to continue this conversation is important. You got to have a plan and you've got to have follow through.
Very good. There's another question here from Tim, or maybe it's a comment. Said the concepts are great to create a good culture. How does a small company with limited resources implement the critical elements?
Yeah, and feel free to reach out to me about that too, because I'm always happy to talk through ideas. But start with easy things. Start with, you know, welcome letters home. If you're not doing that, that's a really easy place to start. You know, creating a brand is still something that, you know, can be very reasonable thing to do. I do think that it's sort of the starting point, right? Is starting with that brand and then building around it. But if that's not something that's accessible to you, think about your communication strategies. For example, you know, the letters home, shout outs, you know, how are you recognizing your employees? Is there communication an opportunity for people to respond? So if your executive team is sending emails out, but then you can't respond back, there you're kind of dictating down, right? Let communication flow. Bring together a marketing communications team that is frontline employees, get people's ideas. But I do think that there are ways that you can just take some of these ideas, the little things, you know, the life critical rules, and that's not a little thing, right? Like, that could save someone's life. So starting small like that can help.
Great, Lisa.
Yeah.
Is there one of the things we talk about a lot with training and safety is the frequency of the messaging. You know, is there a kind of a too much or not enough? Is there any ideas or on that?
Yeah, I don't think that there's a too much, but I think if you're communicating it in the exact same way all the time, then people stop hearing it, right? So that's why having different ways of reaching families, it can't just all be email too.
Right.
You know, having postcards that you mail home, which is surprisingly not as expensive as you would think. You can find those and do them, you know, get those home, or sending letters home, having posters, having wallet cards, having talking points for your managers too. I work a lot of times with companies where the people are all over the country, right? And so sometimes messaging isn't consistent. Providing clear, easy talking points for your managers when they have meetings so that everyone's communicating the same thing. Rebranding, you know, your meetings. If it's D2P, it's your weekly D2P meeting. If it's your employee spotlight, it's your D2P spotlight. But coming up with those different ways to start to think about it and try to avoid everything being via email for sure.
That's great. Real quickly, I'm going to pop up a little poll question here on the screen. Obviously, our company is all about training, and the system that we have, the Infinity system, is also a great communication tool. You can easily upload any kind of content that you would like. So maybe some of the messaging that you want to send out, you could do through the platform. So if anybody's interested in our system, we'd be happy to talk to you about it. Also, I know that we have some certified directors of safety out there that through the NATME group. And if you need a certificate for having attended our webinar today, they do provide some recertification credits or points towards that designation. So wanted to put that up on the screen. So let us know if you need a certificate, and let us know if you want us to talk to you about how you might be able to deliver some training and information. One last thing before I wrap up today. We see a lot of companies out there that have a little slogan that says, "Safety is our #1 priority." Any comments about that, Lisa?
Yes.
I knew you
And
would.
yes, having worked with Brian Filko for many years, you know, priorities change.
They
And
do.
so when we say it's our top priority, you know, you may come in to work in the morning and you've got a list of the top things that you have to do, and then something happens and all of those things change, but those were your priorities for the day. So if you're saying that to your team members, I would encourage you to rethink that safety is not a priority, it's a core value. And our core values don't change. Those are consistent. Those are what we always uphold. So I would definitely, you know, if you've got that poster that says safety is our #1 priority, time to rethink it, I think.
Absolutely. Very good. Well, I don't see any other questions. I'd really appreciate the information you gave us today. There's a lot of things that we could all be doing in our companies to build that culture. Sometimes it's the little things that we recognize in our employees and other people that can build that sort of community. For many years that I've been involved in trucking, companies always want to try to have some kind of a family atmosphere, even if they're a big company. And to me, this is really what you're talking about here, that everybody feels a part of the company that mom or dad or whoever works for. And to me, that will help in a lot of areas in your company, but certainly it will help with safety. And that's going to improve the profitability of your company. And we're protecting our employees and the motoring public out there. So, Lisa, thank you very much. If you all need to reach out to Lisa and have some further questions, her contact information is here on the screen.
Yes, and also
And
find me on LinkedIn too. I'd love to connect with you so I kind of see what you guys are doing
perfect,
as well.
perfect. Anyway, I think that's all the questions I see. Lisa, thank you very much. It was a great program, and maybe we'll have you back in the future and kind of reinforce the message. How about that?
I would love that. Thank you so much for the opportunity, and thank you for everybody who tuned in. I appreciate you guys.
Great. Thank you all very much. Thanks for everybody coming, and we'll look forward to seeing you on our next program. Thank you all.